Okay, so to begin, I'm doing risky behaviors, other substances. So to begin, the four most common substances that are being abused in the workplace are as followed, but not limited to: cocaine in the powdered form or hard form, also known as crack cocaine, which is inhaled or smoked to cause an upper feeling that gives them a huge boost of energy, both mentally and physically, but for a very short time, which leads to withdrawal symptoms, usually while they're working during the day. The next most common one would be marijuana, which is a green leafy substance which is usually smoked in kind of like a cigarette or through what is called a bong, which is basically a water pipe. It helps workers to relax so they can kind of gap out on their tasks so time goes by quicker. It makes them feel basically stoned and makes the workday more tolerable, as some of them would say. But again, it only lasts a short little while, and then the worker feels weak, drained. Production for them would slow down at that point, and they would start making even more mistakes and getting hurt. The next would be amphetamines or methamphetamines, which again is either smoked through a glass tube, or some people do inject it through needles or take it in pill form. This is an upper that tends to last much longer and cost them less money and would give them the effects that they have lots of energy. It would make their mind go about 100 miles an hour and give them a bit of a euphoric feeling. So kind of like a love and peace sort of feeling while they're at work, which would help them get along with people better and would, help their work production actually be a little bit better. But again, at the same time, if they go through any kind of withdrawal symptoms, it would cause them to quickly go downhill with their work. The next substance that I'm going to talk about is the substance that is being abused by not just workers, but basically everywhere in the world, which are opiates, which can kill more people than even car accidents these days. This drug is easy for the body to become very dependent on and cause a user to feel basically normal and have good levels of energy throughout the day. But whenever they're not high on it, though, they would feel withdrawal symptoms, which would cause them to be not only not productive, but feel physically sick throughout the day. This is not good as well because that's their production levels going down quickly if they can't afford to buy the drug or have it during the day at work. So those are some of the main other substances that people are abusing at work. The age group that is most at risk for the abuse is usually between ages 15 to 24 years of age. But don't kid yourself, 75% of workers have reported using drugs at work, so basically this can affect anybody throughout. Okay, the next slide. So these substances are affecting businesses world everywhere and in every aspect, from costing businesses up to $74 billion in lost revenue every year, which is a combination of about 35% lost productivity between men and women due to substance abuse problems. Basically, if they don't have their drug of choice at work, they're not producing very well. And a lot of the industries that have more repetitive tasks, basically things like assembly lines and things like that, have a higher rate of people abusing substances. And right now they've figured out that 36 to 50% of all workplace accidents have something to do with a substance abuse problem, whether the person was using the drug and got hurt or whether the person was going through withdrawal symptoms and got hurt. Workplaces need to start definitely developing a more aggressive method with dealing with the substance abuse problem. Even if it means every worker in the world has to take a drug test on a daily basis, and more specifically, a test that shows if they have done the drugs before they started work, or even do random drug testing during the day if necessary. Okay, on to the next slide. The things employers are doing right now for the substance abuse problems in the workplace are helping, and some of those things are as followed but not limited to: changing and updating their drug policies to include being tested during your interview to give the employer the sense of whether the person is doing drugs, period, or not, and allowing them to ask up front so that maybe a solution other than not hiring the person can be found. The next thing that employers are doing, they're changing the way their benefit packages are to include coverage for rehabs or things like medicine for a methadone clinic, and things like counseling and things like that for their employees. The best way employers are combating this other substance abuse problem is adopting an open door policy where the employee doesn't have to feel afraid of getting fired just because they need help for a problem they can't control. Just because someone has a substance abuse problem doesn't make them a bad or unreliable worker. It just means they need help, and sometimes firing an employee can be 100 times more costly than getting them some paid help. And it's more morally acceptable to help them than to criticize or fire them. Some of the legal constraints I'm going to discuss in the fact that employers are allowed to do drug testing but are not allowed to do random drug testing. This is basically absurd. If a person knows it's coming, they can be clean for just a short time to fool it, then can go back to business as usual, basically. This law should change because it is pointless to try and battle substance abuse in this way. People lie to keep their jobs, period. A random drug test would make employees would have to be clean all the time, which would cut back on a lot of workplace injuries. Although no employee should be fired for admitting to having a problem, I think depending on the situation, there may not be no other option, especially if they are caught encouraging it among other coworkers. Then it should be entirely up to the employer, because there are strict laws around other substance abuse in the workplace. Employers are very limited on what they can do without having the law come down on them, which makes employees feel they can get away with anything. Then just admit, oh, I have a problem, you can't fire me, I need help. Well, yes, in some cases, some just ride the system, though. Only if caught, they will admit to it and ask for help. So basically, unless they're asking for it up front, they shouldn't even have a chance to keep their job. It should just be automatic dismissal, especially if they're encouraging it or caught selling it in the workplace. Okay, so on to my final slide. So to conclude this presentation on the other substance abuse, based on the information I've collected and read through, the government is not allowing employers to come up with suitable, innovative solutions to battling the substance abuse problem that Canadian companies face day in and day out in their operations. Employers need to have more say in what their employees do on their way to or what they do on their lunch hours where they are not being paid. Although yes, they should have the right to do what they want when not being paid, but not if it affects the safety or even production rate of the business in which they work. Also, if employers were to be empowered to be able to do random drug testing instead of having to warn and get their employees to sign consent forms, it wouldn't just be ammo for the employer to fire the employee, but more provide the employer with true facts by which they can begin to address these concerns with that individual to make a plan to help them. The better our employees' life becomes, the more productive they are during work hours. So that's the conclusion to my presentation. Thank you.